Welcome back. Woo! And today we talk about the glory days of Speedway. The glory days. And some of you don't know what Speedway is, so let's tell you what Speedway is all about. A Speedway motorcycle is a 500cc motorcycle that rides around an oval track. It's a dirt track, and it runs on methanol fuel. And it's really fast. It goes with no brakes. It's full speed, full throttle, 0 to 85 kilometers an hour in 3 seconds. It's fast, and it has just a clutch to go. It doesn't have any shifting. It's really a fast motorcycle, and that's a Speedway motorcycle. And now we got all that out of the way. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the glory days of Speedway. Speedway started at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds in the summer of '69. Do you know that song by Bryan Adams? In the summer of '69. Yeah, it was the summer of '69 when Speedway started at the Costa Mesa Bullring. They had just completed the first year of Speedway at the Whiteman Stadium in Pacoima, California. And they had a very successful season there at the Whiteman Stadium. And the Godfather Harry Oxley and the 1937 world champion Jack Milne, they saw Speedway could possibly go big in the OC. And they went ahead and secured the rights to the Orange County Fairgrounds. And in that summer of '69, they started Speedway. They got all those riders from the Whiteman and they brought them over at Costa Mesa Speedway. But wait, let's go back to the Whiteman Stadium. There was a shady promoter, his name was Dude Criswell, and he went ahead and started the Speedway at the Whiteman Stadium. And Jerry Fairchild, there was a very old man by Jerry Fairchild, he was an old Speedway crony. He went ahead and loaded his truck with 1930s, 1940s Speedway bikes, JAPs. And he brought them over to the Whiteman Stadium for all the Speedway, the flat trackers to ride. And they went ahead and rode them. They had handicap, scratch, and they had team racing in the 1968 Speedway season. It was really great. And they went ahead and had a United States Speedway champion. And who was that? It was a young guy. It was a young gun. And his name was Rick the Rocket Woods. Star was born. Rick Woods, he was the first United States Speedway champion, and he went ahead and he was like on the program cover. He was on the advertising of the 1969 Costa Mesa Speedway. That was promoted, like I said, by the Godfather, Harry Oxley, and Jack Milne at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds. It was really perfect timing to start Speedway in that summer of '69. It was the summer where they had the surf craze, the endless summer, and they had the skateboard craze. Skateboarding was coming in town, and also motorcycles. It was just a couple years before On Any Sunday the movie came out, and motorcycles were starting to be very popular. And Costa Mesa is right next to Newport Beach, and that's where all the surfer dudes are. They started these races at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds, and they had like 2,000 spectators. They had the seats for 2,000, and there was an overflow of people. So they went ahead and they added 2,000 more seats. So they had 4,000 seats, and they had an overflow. They had a lot of people going to the Speedway at Costa Mesa back in that summer of '69. So they added 6,000 seats, and they're able to fit everybody in. So there was a lot of money. There's a lot of people. It was before the internet. And lots of people were going to where? They're going to Speedway. Speedway was really electric. I mean, that place was on fire. And then you had all these personalities. You see, in Speedway, it's the people. It's not the motorcycles like other sports, but it's the people, it's the riders, and it's the personalities. You had great riders, great personalities like Wild Bill Cody, Danny Berserko Becker, you had the Bass brothers, Mike and Steve Bass. Woo! and you had a whole slug of other really famous riders at the Costa Mesa Speedway. Everybody loved to go where? At the Speedway. I think what made the 70s so exciting is they had the characters. They had the good guys, they had the bad guys, they had the Bass brothers. They were the bad guys. And then you had Mike Bass. He won 7 out of 10 United States Speedway Championships in the 70s. And you had his brother Steve winning 1, so that was 8 of the 10 United States Speedway Championships were won by who? The bad guys, the Bass brothers, Mike and Steve Bass. I know Mike Bass, and he's a really good guy, and he's really not a villain, but in the 70s, he was the villain. Everybody booed who? Mike Bass. Sometimes he'd go home and cry, like, why are they booing me? So Mike Bass is really a good guy, but they were not really into socializing as far as talking to people. They're all about racing, and they were considered the bad guys. Why? Because they won all the time. They were good. And then you had Rick Woods. He was one of the good guys. He was one of the heroes. And he won 2 United States Speedway Championships in the 70s to round off the 10 in the 70s. So you had the Bass brothers with 8 United States Speedway Championships, and you had the Rocket Rick Woods with 2. And then you had the electric voice of one of the greatest sports announcers of all time, the greatest speedway announcers of all time, and that was Larry Motormouth Huffman. He was really great. He could speak 120 words per minute. He was exciting, he was electric, and he was speedway. Woo! Woo! And then he would announce some of the riders like Danny Becker, and he would do the Huffman hop. And he would say, Danny, Berserko, Becker. And he would do that hop. And the 70s introduced the first super fan of Speedway. And who was that? It was Gene. Gene, the dancing machine. Gene was there, and he was in the crowd. He was all over. He was on the wall walking Costa Mesa. And what was his famous saying? More beer, more beer. But we all loved Gene, the dancing machine. He was cool. We all liked him. He'd walk that wall, he'd walk that wall. And he was drinking a little bit. And then he would fall and he would hit his nuts between the wood, and then he would sing in one soprano. And then you had the stands full of surfer guys and surfer girls, teenagers going to the Speedway. And you know what happens Teenagers, next. They like to drink alcohol, right? They like to drink beer. So there's lots of drinking going on in the stands in the 70s. The guys were really party animals. And then they got a little rowdy, right? They're drinking and they get a little rowdy. And then there'd be a fight over there. And then a fight over there. There'd be fights. And then a fight over there. There's all kinds of entertainment. Why? The guys were fighting, they're drinking, and there was Speedway going on. So in the intermission, you'd have fights, and then the fights would get over with, and then you get to watch Speedway. Oh, I forgot about the chicks. There was beautiful chicks walking around, surfer girls, gorgeous, blonde and brunette surfer girls walking down the aisle between the crash wall and the stands, and all the guys were hooting and hollering for their favorite girl. Some guys liked the blondes, and some guys liked the brunettes, and they were hooting, hollering, and screaming for their famous chick. Those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end. It was fun, and we had a good times, and it was just amazing action at the Speedway. It was a good time. It was the glory days of Speedway. And who can't remember the castor oil smell mixed in with the nitro burning fuel? It was the sweet smell of the castor oil in the air. And then all the little kids would jump over the wall and they would take those tear-offs from the track. The riders would take the tear-offs and throw them up. And who could forget those amazing speedway riders of the 70s? You had Scott Autry, you had Mike Conley, you had Sumner McKnight, you had Troy McKee, you had the Bass Brothers, you had Billy Gray, a father knows best, Billy Gray, you remember that guy. And then we had all these riders, Wild Bill Cody, we had Mike Caruso, we had all these famous riders, and then we had later Jeff Sexton, of Farrell, we had Bruce the Fox Penhall, we had all these amazing riders coming in the latter 70s. The Speedway was amazing, and it was truly the glory days. The 70s was called the glory days of Speedway. Why? Because of the money. The riders were getting 30 or 35% of the gate. Plus, they were getting a purse for winning. So when they won, they'd get double pay. They would get the money from the purse, plus they would get the money they'd get from the gate. And that was a lot of money when you have 6,000 people paying. I mean, Speedway was hot. And it was the glory days for sure. Those riders were getting rich. Those riders were making all kinds of money. There was so many riders and so many celebrities. There were celebrities that we didn't mention, so I apologize if I missed your name because they were just full of characters. And if you missed that particular period of time in the Speedway, if you missed the glory days of Speedway, you really missed it. Those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end. But guess what? They ended. Even though the glory days of Speedway are gone, Speedway now is still amazing. The sport of Speedway is exciting. Speedway is a great sport, and we encourage you to support and enjoy this wonderful sport called Speedway. Thank you so much for joining us today down the road to memory lane, down the memory lane. And we talk about the early days, the glory days of Speedway, and they were glorious. Speedway's still special today, and so we appreciate all the riders of the past, of the present. Speedway is just a fantastic sport, and one of the greatest sports ever is what? It's called Speedway.